Welcome, everybody. It is great to see you for the final week of our Teach with Chrome series. It's been going fast, but we still have a great week ahead of you with additional sessions. This is our session today, SEL and Chrome, and we'll be focusing on a lot of different tools and resources to support you using Chrome and Chromebooks in the classroom. We'll go ahead and start the slides and get those queued up. And just a couple of introductions. Thank you everyone for posting in chat. It's great to see all of your comments, and we will certainly be monitoring that as we go through. So feel free to welcome each other and say hi. I am Donna Toiber. I'm a Google for Education certified innovator and trainer, as well as a coach, working with Kiker Learning and also online teaching. So I've been dealing with remote teaching over the last couple of years. I'd like to thank the Google for Education team and Kiker Learning for supporting this initiative and these sessions. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Marjorie Raylander, who is a school psychologist. And when I think about a person who's taught me the most about social emotional learning, I have to say it's Margie, because she has always been asking big questions. How might we be there in the moment when a student needs our support? And so I'll turn it over to her for an introduction.
Hi, I'm super excited to be here. Donna is one of my favorite people to have big conversations with, and this is my favorite topic ever, social emotional learning. But I'm a school psychologist. I've been in Richland 2 over the last 16 years, and this year, for the last 4 years, I've been at Westwood High School with all of the teenagers, and school is what it is these days, so there's a lot of room for social emotional learning.
Well, thank you, Margie, and I'm excited to have you here as we go through this agenda today. So today we'll be focusing on a structure around the CASEL framework and those competencies to align our resources with that, to give you a framework. And then we'll be launching into SEL in action, giving you a lot of demos of tools and resources to support you and your students. And we'll close with a Q&A. So as I said, we'll monitor the questions. We may catch a few as we go through, but we'll definitely leave time at the end for additional Q&A. And with that, we'll start with the CASEL framework. There are a number of different frameworks that you can use to connect with social emotional learning. But Margie and I, in talking, felt that these competencies were really important. Self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. And you can see that it goes beyond the students and teachers in the classrooms. It goes throughout the school for families and caregivers, as well as for the community. And all of these are aspects of social emotional learning. Margie, give us a few thoughts on this framework.
Well, I just think, sometimes we think of framework as just too scripted or guided, but I think everything is social emotional learning these days, and it's really important for us to plan our activities in an organized, structured manner. So as a school psychologist, I kind of plan a lot of different activities across a lot of different areas to make sure that I'm hitting the topics that are important. So when you're in the classroom, making sure that you're hitting all of the topics and not just one, having a framework to plan by is just as important as lesson planning sometimes. So.
Yes, and with that, we're going to launch into SEL in action and give you some resources to support in each of these areas. So we'll start with self-awareness and digital wellness, really. Margie, you want to tell us about your check-in form and some additional resources?
Yeah, digital wellness is a big topic for students these days, and just bringing awareness to how much we're using technology, how it helps us with our goals or not. So I love Google Forms to teach self-reflection skills with students, making sure that they're having the self-monitoring and that they're checking in with themselves, but also, having that responsibility partner to check in with them. So Google Forms is awesome for this. You can personalize it with your little tech tip. You right click and you can add some emojis or whatever personalization the kids like. And it also, the graphs, it can graph something in 30 seconds, which used to take me like days to do. So you get like automatic feedback about trends, and kind of where that student is over a period of time, which can be really insightful for kiddos.
Yeah, and I love that it's using tools that you already have. So you don't have to go out and buy a lot of different resources. Google Workspace for Education supports that. And I will say, Margie, I love the emojis. I right click all the time and add emojis. So kids will enjoy doing that too. And they can do that on their Chromebooks with that right click. A few additional resources. Panorama Learning is a website that you may want to go to. They also have some social emotional learning check-in templates. And these are also very easy to download and use with Google Forms. So you can scroll down and see a lot of different check-in templates, virtual check-in, a temperature check. So you can download that. Make a copy of it. So there are a number of different resources here to support you with that. And then the other thing I'll pull up, Margie wanted to tell you a little bit about a survey that she conducted at her school.
So we do a little bit of word on the street where I just get people to share their digital statistics with me about how many hours a day. I know everybody's going to look at their phone now to see their weekly average, but I think, this awareness moment is really powerful in big groups. And you can see here, the kids versus the staff members that participated. But there's a large difference. Like our teenagers are on their phones from 8 to 14 hours a day sometimes. Where we do have some staff members that get up there, but adults are usually on their phones less. So just bringing that awareness and how that impacts our productivity and our learning is really important. So I kind of share this out with my staff and students so that they can see those fun things that are happening. Because I'm a data nerd, and Google Sheets helps us with that.
Yeah, so another way you could collect that in Google Forms or just and then you'll have that and can have those charts and graphs to really see what's happening in your school. And with that, managing your time is so important. I know that I need to have some breaks also. So one of the tools that I use quite a lot is this Pomo Focus. It's a Pomodoro timer. You can think about your Italian for tomatoes. So a tomato timer is really where this name came from. But it's really just to keep track of your time. And so for Pomo Focus, this is a website that will run on any of your devices, your Chromebooks. And you've got short breaks, you've got a 25-minute break, a short break, a long break, and you can also add tasks. So this is a nice thing. You can add any additional task you need to complete that day, and you can check those off when you're finished with that. Margie?
Yeah. So as you know, prioritization is like the key to success in adults day, right? What do I absolutely have to finish today? Teenagers don't always get this skill right away. So having this type of thing to help them prioritize, those reminders are helpful. We all learned during the pandemic that a lot of our memory prompts were in our office, and then we're at home trying to remember what we're supposed to be doing for the day. I don't know if anybody else had that fun thing happening, but our kids are going through that all the time because most of their workspace is on the computer. So finding those things that work for them to help them prioritize, so it's not just a sea of Google Classrooms and Google Reminders, is so helpful to them to identify that.
Yeah, so that's Pomo Focus. There are many other extensions, and we will go to the Chrome Web Store and show you where you can get some of the others. Let's launch right on into this last one that we have for this area around self-awareness, and it's Elemental. So this is a tool that there is a paid subscription, but there are some resources available here for students, for young adults, giving students just a daily check-in practice, different types of poses, things to just calm them down. And there are a number of different resources also to support that.
So I just want to share, mindfulness is such an important strategy. It seems to be more of a buzzword these coming years, but students are checking out on TikTok or Instagram, and really our battle is getting them to check in for themselves and check into what's happening in the classroom. So being able to sit with ourselves in silence and practice a way to check in with themselves really helps to manage a lot of the anxieties that students have. A lot of times when students create that bad habit of checking out, you see a lot of disengagement in school, and it is super hard to get over that hump, as I'm sure many of you are experiencing. So just making sure that we're checking in and showing up for ourselves is a big digital wellness skill that we have going on here.
Yeah, so that's Elemental. And now we are going to launch into some self-management tools to support you. Margie mentioned AI reminders. Tell us about that. I wasn't really aware of what that was.
Well, AI is the up and coming thing. Everybody can get an online therapist these days. So there's a lot of great research that, shows this is going to be the way of the future. Wiza is one of, the most widely used apps, but it's not only, you know, it's not only checking in with your feelings, but like, what do I do next when I feel anxious? Wiza will give you some very good prompts. If you go in there and say, I'm feeling really nervous today, that little penguin will say, I'm sorry to hear that. Why don't you take a couple of 3 breaths with me? And it'll do like the breath thing on there, but it'll prompt the skill that matches kind of what you're reporting, which is so great for the students to take their skills beyond just awareness. Like, okay, I'm nervous. What do I need to do about this? And know that they can handle it themselves. So this is a great way that AI is growing to help us with all those things.
Yeah, so check that out just to even think about some ideas for how you might connect students also with the real people in their building too. I have to point out Margie as school psychologist, but so many helpers in the school who can help support students with that. And then another Google Workspace for Education tool, Google Keep. If you haven't been using it, check it out. It's a great resource to post lots of different types of information, and it's a great way for students to manage their time, to track mindfulness, to journal. There are just so many different uses for it. It's very easy just to take a note. And of course, you can add labels, you can upload images, you can go to the more options to show some check boxes. The other thing I really love about it is that it's got notifications. So students can set up reminders to remind them to do different things. And it also has the sharing option. So if a student sets this up, or even a teacher can set it up and share it with a student, then that there can be a collaborator. There can be someone who can say, hey, did you get that work done? I know even when my child was very young, having access to someone who could remind her about everything on that checklist was really important. So think about how your students might be able to use this. I even use it for a mood board. If I'm working on a particular topic, I might post some of the resources there as images. There's a pin option, so you can pin notes and they will be at the top. So that's one way that even as teaching, I could use this as a mood board by posting a lot of resources and pinning them to the top. And then that could be shared out with students, through the class projection. The other thing I did was a little hack here. I thought, I have journaling apps, but I never journal. Is there a way to hack Google Keep for journaling? And of course there is. It's just a checklist. And students could go in for some daily journaling just by adding list items. And that might be another thing that you want to share out with your students. And finally, what's really cool about it is if you go to your more options, you can copy all of that to Google Docs. So students might keep a journal for the week or reflections for the week, and then they can copy that right over to Google Docs, share it out with the teacher, and get credit for having completed that journaling. So those are a few different tools there. The final tool that we wanted to showcase is going to come up in just a minute, I believe, which is Move It. But we wanted to just share out the Chrome Web Store. So there are a number of extensions here. The Google Play Store for the Chromebooks also has a number of different apps for movement, for reminders, for timers. And Move It is one that I have on my computer. It just reminds me to get up and do something. So we'll see that in demonstration within the next minute or two. And we'll all either do what it asks us to do or skip it, depending on what it asks us to do. But I wanted to share that this is a good place to come and get some nice extensions, and you'll have those extensions shared out in your Chrome browser.
External reminders are the power of, getting things done, especially with teenagers. I once programmed a teenager's phone to remind him to do his work every 30 minutes, and it took him 4 weeks to figure out how to turn it off. So, but like any way that we can give those reminders to students is super helpful.
Yeah, so we'll see that probably in just a moment. And now we're going to go into some responsible decision-making tools. How much is too much? And so we've got some resources to share around responsible decision-making.
So this is the question I think everybody has been asking as they've been locked up in their houses for the last 2 years and really coming back to school. So, digital literacy is a big topic, and how we're teaching our kids to be online. My grandma always used to say, don't do it if you don't want me to read it on the front page of the paper. And that, man, is even more true today. And our kids are having to learn that at very young ages. A lot of our teenagers have been stuck in their houses by themselves, so they only have what's on social media to go by, and they haven't really met people in life. So really, that's a big lesson that is playing out in our schools right now for girls, especially those ninth grade girls that don't always have nice things to say. So this Be Internet Awesome really helps to guide some lessons, to do extra lessons on those types of things. How to share, what to share, all those good lessons.
Yeah, and so I'll just scroll down a little bit on the Be Internet and Awesome site. They also have a number of different templates for Pear Deck. So you might want to take a look at some of these resources: sharing with caring, don't fall for fake, things like cool to be kind. So there are so many good resources here. And here we are, move it. Everybody hop from your left to the right foot for 10 seconds. So we'll hop around a little bit, give yourself a little break there. We'll get right back to it. So some other resources beyond Be Internet Awesome are available through Pear Deck. Pear Deck has some social emotional learning templates. It's very easy to download these in Google Slides or PowerPoint. And then you can open these templates up in slides. So I'll just click on this first one. If you've got that add-on for Pear Deck, you can just go in and open that Pear Deck add-on and share this out with your students. There are a number of different tools here to support you as you go through lessons, what's moments of silence, what's filling your bucket. I love this stress check, just a quick check-in with students around how they're feeling. And then there are some additional resources to support relationship building, describing different perspectives and active listening. So take a look at some of those resources. And yes, this slide deck will be available afterwards, so you'll have all of these links. And then finally, let's hop on over to Jamboard, and Margie is going to tell us about how she's used this for this decision making with students.
So I think, hopefully you found Jamboard throughout the pandemic and virtual learning that this is a great space to have conversations. So this is a decision-making activity that we use to kind of think about behaviors and their risk levels. So the light gray is like low risk, medium risk, all the way up to dark green, which is high risk. So the two things that impact decision-making are the likelihood that it'll happen and the severity of harm, right? So if I post this on the internet, what is the likelihood that, my friends are going to see it? It's pretty hard. It's pretty likely, right? So what's the level of harm that it's going to cause to my friend, and where does that fall? So that really helps guide and have great conversations about those really big topics that you're dealing with in your classroom these days. Like sometimes the things that come in my office, I'm like, I don't know. Let's workshop that and figure out what it means. So we have to have some type of format, and Jamboard's a great way to do that online, but also in the classroom setting to kind of have that engagement in an anonymous way, even because Jamboard, you don't always have to have your name next to someone, but it helps with conversation. So.
And we have some from Tika. We have the other additional resources to support you with Jamboard. Gratitude jar, how are you feeling roller coaster, kindness challenge. So there are a number of different Jamboard templates that you can very easily download and modify for your own use. And then finally, in this category, let's just dive into common sense media.
The media these days. So I think that, this is a big question. There's media everywhere. What is appropriate at each age level and what's not. And I will tell you, in my work, parents are just as confused as we are at school sometimes. But I think, making sure that we remind ourselves that this topic is important to share out with parents too is so helpful, because the more the parents know, like, what your expectations are for media, they can help to guide that at home, right? Make sure your students aren't watching this show about da-da-da, because this was like the big conversation during lunch today, because a lot of our shows that kids are watching or the people they're coming in contact with show up in a lot of different ways. So, us as parents don't always know how to deal with that, but the more resources we can give out. And this is a great site for just real simple, big question topics that are coming up a lot. So I know Roblox is super, that's a big topic in my household with a 10-year-old. So
yeah, so definitely check out that website. And we're getting to these, I call it like the higher order SEL activities here. So relationships, so important, building community with our students. So we've got some examples here. Margie's got a Google Classroom, and I've got an example of one. So I'll just hop into Classroom, and then you can tell us how you use that with students.
Well, I think that just building relationships online as a school psychologist, I had to really think very hard, because that's what I do all day. And I was like, what? Students aren't coming to the building. What? This can't be. So I really had to kind of rethink resources and how I could deliver school psychologist services to students and staff. So one way that I did this was I created a Google Classroom for my intervention staff at school, so that they had access to lessons or Google Meets around topics that people could join or not join, but also just know that they could hop over and find a really good lesson on this topic was super important. So it also gives me a space to house all of those things. So, when somebody's like, come teach a social skill lesson on this, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go. And I can just share that out and create a community on there. So I do a lot of team teaching with people, and the Google Classroom is a great place to kind of warehouse those types of things. And Richland too uses Google Classroom for everything. So the more similar things are with what you're already using is super helpful. And so the other way that I did that is I really retooled my website, and I planned some activities to kind of share out through my website. So I have a lot of good social emotional tips on there, who I am. And then, I also use that Google form at the end. If you click on the resources, Donna, you can see, how to contact me to schedule an appointment. And that form comes, I have it coded, so it comes right to my phone, so I can answer right away. If people are still looking for help, so they can figure out, how to get to me. So that's a fun way to.
Yeah. That's great. She's got so many great resources on her website to support the staff and students. And then a final idea we had for you using Google Workspace for Education again is Google Sites. There are some nice resources here. There is a student portfolio template. So it's really easy to give students the ability to create a working portfolio or a showcase portfolio of the work that they're proud of. This could be used for parent-teacher conferences, giving students some ability for student-led conferences to have some ownership of their learning, for sharing out what they're learning in class. And so we wanted just to share this is a very easy way to give your students that place to share and to showcase their work. Take the templates. Google Sites is so easy to set up. Students can go in very easily and complete those portfolios. And so I think we've been through the relationships. I'm checking time. We've got a few more minutes. I think we can do this.
I
So
know. Social awareness.
yes, I'm going to go right into just talking about a couple of resources to support students and social awareness. Google Slides, of course, is a great place to get started with that. One thing that I'd love to just share is Applied Digital Skills. They do have some resources around creating community service projects. So if you wanted your students to work on a community service project, they can go and find video-based lessons to teach them how to complete a presentation about that. You also have teaching materials. And with that, you've got lesson plans and sample rubrics. And Margie does have a student sample here of some work students have completed in her school.
So I think teens are talking more than ever about this, social awareness and what's going on around me and how can I help it. And mental health is such a big topic. And you can just see how the students are framing their thoughts on this and really kind of sharing that information out, what they've learned with others, in like these handout types of ways and presentations that they do for some of their content classes.
Yeah, so giving them a chance to share out their learning and using different tools for that. And then a final resource I'll share with you, one of my favorites, is Design for Change. If you wanted your students to participate in a design thinking project, Design for Change is available. You can sign up as a teacher, and then you can actually go to a dashboard and create a new project. And add in content for your students as they go through the design thinking process around a social issue, going through the empathy warm up, giving them a chance to do some interviewing, and then giving them a social awareness outreach project. So they've got several different ones. One is the mental health. Once you set that up, you can go right in and get going with these. So going right into mental health here, you can begin to add objectives and outcomes and then share these resources out with your students. So thinking about how to get your students involved with social awareness, this is a great platform that can help with that. And of course, we'll share the links out, but search Design for Change on Google and you'll find it. And then the last, and then the last resource is Act for Youth. They also have a number of different templates to support you. So we just wanted to give you a range of different resources to support. They have lesson plans there. And of course, going out on the web, you'll see lots of additional resources. We don't have time to showcase all of these, but you might want to go to the Chromebook App Hub. And if you go to the Chromebook App Hub and click on their ideas option, you can filter by idea categories. So you could go down and you could choose social emotional learning, and you can even go by age range if you want to find some different resources for different ages. And then you can find tools that will support your students with lots of social emotional learning activities. So all of that is there in the Chromebook App Hub. And if you've got a spare minute, Google Earth Education, Margie and I love the resources, GeoGuessr, just some resources to help your students connect with the rest of the world, to begin to see issues that are happening outside of, maybe their school or their local community, but out in the larger world. So those are some resources that we really love.
And also just using the skill of noticing what's going on around me, right? So those are great things.
Yeah, so I think we did it. Even with our moving, we got to the Q&A. So we wanted to just give you a minute. If there are any additional questions, we'd love to answer any questions you have. And we'll check out the comments section for that. As reading through, it looks like some of you are familiar with some of these resources.
So if you're using something we haven't reviewed, please shout that out in the comments for us, because I think one of the most powerful things is the audience that we have today here, right? We have such a great group of people from all over. And I think you all are, our biggest resource and how those things are are working. So please share out your favorite tip too. That's so fun to hear.
Yeah, so Pear Deck is it is an add-on for Google Slides. So it's a way that you can share your content with the class, but you can either guide them through the presentation or they can go at their own pace. But you can embed questions, check-ins. So that may be something you'd like to just go to the website and check out.
So it looks like there is a question here about how I use them as a school psychologist. So I really plan tier 3 services in the school for students. So I will see students on a crisis basis, but I also co-teach in a couple targeted areas for students for tier 3. So I plan community events, those tier 2 teaching with students, and then I also use a skill set in crisis. So it really helps me to have, that big plan of the skills that I'm teaching as I can work with students through what they're going. So it does take a lot of thought, but I think school psychologists, are very important in the overall, social emotional planning for a school. I work with a lot of teachers too, just in collaboration and sharing out the fun things. Thank you for that question, though. It's a good question.
Okay, well, we are at time, so thank you very much for joining us. Thank you so much, Margie, for sharing your expertise in this area. And we know you all have a lot of great resources to share, so connect with people you've met today, and all of these resources will be available for you, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.